Imagine this. It's the year 1381. England is gripped by famine, plague, and crippling taxes. The poor are crushed under the weight of the nobility's power, and just when hope seems lost, a spark ignites among the commoners. This spark will change the course of English history forever. Welcome to the story of the Peasants Revolt, one of the most dramatic moments in medieval England. What drove the common people to rise up against the might of the crown and the landowning elite? And why, despite their defeat, did the rebels' message echo across centuries? Stick with us as we unravel the story of how ordinary people challenged the system. To understand why the peasants revolted, we first need to understand what life was like in 14th century England. Picture a world where the Black Death had wiped out nearly half of the population just a few decades earlier. The plague not only devastated families but also created labor shortages. You'd think this would mean better conditions for workers, right? Not quite. The ruling class, determined to maintain their wealth and power, implemented strict labor laws that limited wages and tied peasants to the land. And then came the taxes. England was embroiled in costly wars with France, and King Richard II's government imposed a heavy poll tax, hitting the poorest the hardest. This wasn't just an economic burden, it was a spark that would lead to a nationwide revolt. In June 1381, that spark became a flame in the counties of Essex and Kent. Angered by the third poll tax in 4 years, villagers refused to pay, driving out tax collectors. The rebellion quickly spread, with peasants across the southeast of England joining forces. Led by charismatic figures like Wat Tyler and the radical preacher John Ball, the peasants organized themselves into a formidable army. But this wasn't just about taxes. The peasants' demands went far deeper. They wanted an end to serfdom, the release of prisoners, and justice for the poor. They weren't fighting just for themselves. They were demanding a new, fairer social order. With momentum on their side, the rebels marched on London. Incredibly, they met little resistance as they entered the capital. The city's gates were opened by sympathetic townsfolk, and the rebels quickly made their presence felt. They stormed the Tower of London, executing unpopular officials, including the king's treasurer and the Archbishop of Canterbury. King Richard II, just 14 years old at the time, was forced to negotiate with the rebels. Wat Tyler demanded radical reforms, abolishing serfdom, lowering taxes, and redistributing land. Astonishingly, the young king agreed to these demands in an attempt to calm the revolt. But was this promise genuine, or just a stalling tactic? As with many uprisings, the tide soon turned. On June 15, 1381, during a meeting between the king and the rebels at Smithfield, Wat Tyler was mortally wounded, either in an altercation with the king's men or by the mayor of London. With their leader dead, the rebels were left leaderless and in shock. King Richard II quickly seized the opportunity. He revoked his earlier promises, mobilized loyal forces, and crushed the rebellion. In the weeks that followed, many rebels were hunted down and executed. The revolt had been quashed, but its impact would live on. So, was it all for nothing? Absolutely not. While the immediate rebellion was a failure, the Peasants' Revolt left an indelible mark on English history. The harsh feudal system that bound peasants to the land began to unravel in the decades that followed. The revolt exposed deep societal fractures, and though it took time, the voice of the common people would be heard more clearly in the years to come. The Peasants' Revolt was an early assertion of popular power, a declaration that ordinary people had the right to question and challenge authority. And though the changes they fought for weren't realized in their lifetimes, their actions helped plant the seeds for a more just and equal society. The Peasants' Revolt may have been crushed, but it was far from forgotten. It marked a turning point in the struggle between the powerful and the powerless, and its legacy echoes down to us today. Thank you for joining us in exploring this fascinating chapter of history. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on more stories from the past that shaped our present. What do you think? The Peasants Revolt, was it a failure or the beginning of something greater? Let us know in the comments.